And the primaries leading up to the midterms are the absolute most important vote you can make. Win in the primary, which means in California, the top two vote getters. When I say win, that only means come in second. I don't expect to beat Dave Min in the primary. I do expect to beat his ass in a head-on-head when we get to November in 2026.
I have zero doubt that you're going to do that, because I've known you since the campaign. I know your capabilities. I know your passion. I know how you think.
So SB 144, we must stop this legislation from being enacted in our state of California.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Scarlett.
Welcome back to my show. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm delighted to be here.
Tell us what's new, what you want us to know about everything.
Well, as we talked about before, what I'd like to do for your audience in those is assuming that some of those aren't following closely to the MAHA agenda, because the implementation of the MAHA agenda is one of my three core principles that I want to go to Washington to make sure to help move along. So what I'd like to do for your audience is run down. I made up a list here of the major key updates on the MAHA agenda, because the MAHA agenda is so important to us all. So I could do that, and then that will stimulate. There's a couple of things I'd like to bring to the audience's attention that hopefully, if they don't already know about it, I can help inform them to help us to implement the MAHA agenda. And then I would like to talk about our campaign and what I'm doing and give an update there. So if that works for you, let's.
Sounds great. Yeah, take it away.
So let me just give the audience a little quick update on MAHA. The most important thing that from a big picture standpoint is MAHA has shifted the focus of the U.S. health policy from managing sickness to preventing it through nutrition, transparency, and accountability, which is amazing. Everywhere almost I go now, people are talking about the food additives, the quality of their food. They're talking about this. And Bobby has already gotten, I think the latest survey shows it, he's at 58% popular rating, which is overwhelmingly the most respected and popular political figure currently of our time. I mean, he's surpassing everybody quickly, which is wonderful. Yeah. So a couple of things that he's done amazingly. So the Health and Human Services for everybody is HHS. They've already established a reprioritizing of the budgets towards prevention, nutrition, and chronic illness reduction. They're elevating the environmental and food safety as core health issues, not side notes. And in Congress, Senate hearings put the MAHA reforms into the national spotlight. And there's something I want to point out to everybody, because when they have friends who are not in support yet of MAHA and Bobby, I want to point out to them something that's called the speech or debate clause, and it's in the Constitution. And what it says is that a member of Congress, in their official duties in a committee hearing or on the floor, have total immunity for anything they say. So they can say anything and have no liability to it. In other words, they can lie and nobody can hold them accountable. And that's exactly what they've learned to do since social media came out over the last many years, 20 plus years now. And what they do is they'll put Bobby and other witnesses in other hearings on the witness stand. They'll ask them a particular question, and then they'll go, "You lied." And they'll take that clip of, like in this case, Bobby giving a very specific, clear, legal answer. He's liable if he lies. They're not. So they'll say he's lying, and then they'll create these clips and send them out instantly, practically, social media, so that within minutes, millions of people will hear this. And they'll hear somebody in Congress pointing a finger at Bobby right after he answers this question, and they're saying, "But you're lying." And then they will put up even sometimes posters and charts, and they can be lying through their teeth and not be held accountable. And that's where, if they listen in full to Bobby's response, they'll see the frustration, because he knows they're lying and they have no accountability. And so I want people to know that's called the speech or debate clause in the Constitution. They can go read it for themselves, and that's why they get away with this. And unfortunately, people say, well, if my congressperson said it, it must be true. So anybody else they hear it from Bobby's lips or from anybody else, they go, oh, they must be lying because my congressperson certainly has access to more and credible information than they have. So I wanted to point that out. So back to Congress. Criticism has been loud, but it confirms that Maha is driving the debate on vaccines, SNAP reform, and food safety. And I'll point out again on SNAP, for example, what they've done with SNAP is to say, no, it's not that we're cutting back on SNAP money. What we're cutting back on is you can't spend it. You can't spend other taxpayer dollars. And people need to remember when they're saying spending our dollars, the government dollars, that is money that they've either taxed directly from us or
Yeah.
gotten from us in fees, or they've expanded the monetary system. They've printed the money, which then is the silent killer, which is called inflation, which defeats and deflates the value of your income and any of your savings. And so, one way or the other, those benefits are costing us. And SNAP, when people are allowed to go out there and buy all this junk food, all of these soft drinks and highly processed foods, then that makes them, it contributes, let's say, to their obesity and other issues, which then pushes them into the healthcare system, which again is forcing
Our
responsibility
burden again. Yes.
onto everybody. So, and Scarlett, please feel free to just interrupt at any time and ask any question.
Mhm.
But moving on to this short list, CDC. A lot of people talk about the shakeup there, and yes, but the old guard, these same people who are in these positions of responsibility, sometimes for years, that Bobby has replaced, they're all making all these outrageous statements and stuff. But you folks, look at yourself and ask yourself a simple question, and ask all of your friends who are upset. Look at what Bobby's doing. This is outrageous. Except ask them to ask this question. Look around. What is the health of our nation? Why are we the sickest nation in the world overwhelmingly? Why do we spend more than double what the next nation spends? It's outrageous. So these people who have been given and paid and their careers have been about protecting our health, look at the results of what they've done and say, you know what, folks, either you are incompetent or corrupt. Either way, you need to be gone. And so Bobby's doing a great job of trying to clean that up. But at the same token, he's trying to give people who are good people caught inside the system, who wanted to do the right thing, but to keep their jobs, were committed to going along. And so now they understand they have a leader who really wants true results for the people, and they can keep their job by doing the right thing. And they will lose their job by if they've proven again that they're not willing to do their job on behalf of the American people that they're getting paid for.
I love the CDC purge. In an ideal world, CDC should just be disbanded altogether. And if we need something to oversee this whole communicable disease things, then we can reorganize, right? We don't need all those people just sucking our blood. They're living off our tax dollars, and they're doing nothing, or they're doing things to harm us. And I think a lot of people who are disgruntled about the shakeup, they just listen to mainstream media. They criticize the lifestyle choices of Bobby, but I mean, if they just take a look at the guy, I think his name is Dimitri.
Yeah.
He's a demonic. he's a Satanist, right? Like the things that he does. Like if you actually look at what he does, and you compare that side by side with Bobby's lifestyle choices, the choice is clear. Like, why would you choose someone who's a Satanist versus choose someone who's wholesome, who works out all day, who advocates for healthy lifestyle? But people don't actually look at it. They just hear the media sound bites, and they just believe it. So I think that's where the dissatisfaction comes from. But despite all the smears in the media, all the lies from the Congress, Bobby's rating is still overwhelmingly positive. So I'm happy about that.
And it's growing. It's growing.
Yes.
And that is exactly why I pointed out that speech or debate clause, because that's one of the biggest sound bites that people put confidence in.
Yeah.
We have been led to believe, and rightly we should, that our Congress people are there with integrity and they have access to really good information that the rest of us don't have, and they have staffs that do that. The unfortunate reality is that the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of those people that are career politicians that have been elected and worked their way up through the system are there for their own self-enrichment, for the protection of the party, and they're getting paid for all of that by the special interest money, the huge amounts of money that are poured in. So let me go back to a couple more things for people to talk about. And I mentioned SNAP before, and I want to, it cut and expose the flaws, but Maha has turned it into an opportunity to reset and re-implement with a focus on nutrient-dense foods. The proposed tiered benefits, more support for fresh produce and protein foods, less for junk food. Nutrition education, reframed as practical cooking and health skills, not paperwork. So that's some of the important changes there. As it relates to vaccines and COVID, he's supporting access to safe vaccines while rejecting blanket mandates, framing as pro-data, pro-consent, pro-transparency, and acknowledging that Warp Speed success did address the knowledge that Trump had at the time that he was given. He believed also in the Faucis and the others of the world. He was taken in my opinion. And Warp Speed, he was dead set on it because he was trying to help the people. He didn't realize what he now knows. And that's why he's addressing this and allowing Bobby to do what he's doing. Environmental health, another big change that Bobby's made. He's tying the chemical and pesticide exposure directly to the chronic disease outcomes. And he's making prevention through cleaner food, water, and air a public priority. And something, again, I want to point out to the audience. We have the initiatives there for the pesticide immune shield. And these companies, they've tried to work through Congress. And you got to remember in Congress, folks, the majority of those people have been there being supported by the pharmaceutical industry, the pesticide industry, and others. They might give lip service to supporting Trump and Bobby, but they're just trying to wait them out. Evidence being that they've been trying to slip into bills a pesticide shield similar to the liability shield. And what that means for the audience benefit is a pesticide shield would limit them on any liability for the results or the outcomes, health outcomes that affect our people. They wouldn't be able to be sued. And these people are making literally billions of dollars in profits while they're knowingly selling pesticides and other chemicals that are put into our food or into how it's grown, et cetera, that are causing people to have enormous health issues. And then they're being shielded from being sued when it's proven a direct link between their product and this person's inability to live a normal functioning life and the cost of that. And that's outrageous. And what they figured out, since Congress and so many people did a great job of calling Congress out and getting them to stop that bill that was hidden in there. I forget the exact numbers, but people can look it up. But now Bear is leading the effort throughout the nation to go state by state, because the same thing they can do state by state. And I'll get into that in a little more detail specific to vaccines in a minute, but they're going state by state. 2 states have already passed liability shields for pesticide industry. My memory serves me right, it's North Dakota and Georgia. Then right now, 9 other states have bills already introduced that are working their way through the process. So this is something everybody needs to track closely and follow the votes of your congresspeople, your state elected officials on these things, and hold them accountable. And holding them accountable means you will vote against them. You will make it public knowledge of how they are trying to deceive us for their own benefit. So a couple other things. Environmental health. I've just touched on that. Some other overall wins. He has forced the national conversation on prevention and chronic illness. Amazing. He's pushed accountability into the CDC and the FDA. He has elevated food and environmental safety to the same level as traditional medical care. So what's next is rolling out the MAHA line SNAP reforms, advancing the FDA actions on food dyes, processed food oversight, securing reform-minded permanent leadership at CDC, and building a bipartisan momentum to measure the success in reduced illnesses, not just increased spending. And that, I want to veer away for a second. That is one of the major reasons why I am running for Congress, because upcoming in the midterms will be the opportunity for the opposition, the status quo, the uniparty. There's lots of words for it, but we know the Democratic machine, and we know many of those who are currently part of the GOP, the Grand Old Party, of the status quo, and that they are there waiting out till the midterms, which traditionally the party that is out of power has the ability to then regain the control, the majority of either the House or the Senate. If that happens in the 2026 midterms coming up, everything Bobby has been working on, everything you, Scarlett, these incredible tiger moms, I like to think of them as, that are
We
just
are.
the leaders behind this effort. I mean, if it wasn't for the women volunteers, this wouldn't have happened. As many guys like myself have been out there, I tell you what, there's 8 out of 10 volunteers are these impassioned mothers who are there to protect their children
Yeah.
and future generations. And that's why I love you, Scarlett, and so many of these dedicated moms who my heart goes out to. The little boy next door has autism. The little girl across the street has autism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just amazing. I've surrounded this neighborhood with neighbors whose children, it breaks my heart to
I
hear
know.
their
Yeah.
screams and know that they're not having a chance to live a normal life and have their opportunities like we were given. So
Mhm.
that's why I've dedicated myself to this. But for the listeners, the midterms and the primaries leading up to the midterms are the absolute most important vote you can make, because it's who we choose. And in California, with the top 2 tier, who makes it into the final vote in November, that is the most crucial. They know if they can control who gets in the general election, because it's a representative of the status quo of the old guard of either. They don't care who you vote for, because whoever you vote for doesn't matter to them. And that's why the primary is the absolute essential place to be able to put forth candidates who have demonstrated through their life story
Mhm.
a life of integrity, that when they say they'll do something, they will do it. A life truly committed to service. So don't let yourself be influenced by, oh, this person has all these lists of endorsements from all of these organizations,
Mhm.
because most every one of those are bought and paid for.
That's exactly
Every
what
one of
it
those,
is.
yeah, and almost every one of those institutions are part
Mhm.
of the establishment who don't
Yeah.
want it to go the way it's going.
Yeah. Yeah. They have all the money to buy endorsement support and fake grassroots support, AstroTurf.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that term because it is the truth. It's phony.
Yeah.
So
They
there's
don't they
something.
don't care a bit about us.
No, it's all about their own power, their own self-enrichment for themselves and their
Yeah.
family and friends. And
Mhm.
that's how they can look the other way while all of this is going on. And I know Nicole Shanahan did a great interview podcast on her show, which I encourage people to go look at. It's only maybe in the last month, but she was a former executive in one of the big investment firms.
Mhm.
And she talked clearly about how these people would come on that she had to vet. And these CEOs of these big, huge global corporations selling pharmaceutical products, pesticides, and other things would come on and say, look at how many billions of dollars you're talking about, a profit we'll make. And she
Mhm.
would point out, well, in your test results, it shows these dramatically harmful effects on 2, 3, 4%.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, that's okay. And that effects, they were willing to put making that money, that huge amounts of money, ahead of any willingness to make it known so that somebody taking that drug, using that product, can make their informed choice that, yeah, I've got a 97% chance it's going to help me, but there's a 3% chance that my child could be born with some birth defect, etc. Maybe I don't want to take that. Now, maybe I'm out of the birthing area. Maybe they're willing to take it. That's fine. But give them the informed, truthful, informed consent.
Mhm.
So a couple of things I want to point out to the audience before I go off on too many rants, and I apologize. But that, as Bobby, as I try to remind my much younger friends in my campaign that are millennials and Gen Zs, that this is the style that comes out of my generation, and I'm not going to apologize for it, because I think context is crucial,
Mhm.
and these 140 character limitations and such is what's dumbed down our culture and helped contribute significantly to the problems that we have. Senator or Secretary Kennedy just recently appeared with, Mary Markey, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and others to report something that's really important. Kennedy announced, quote, we have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world, and yet we spend more on healthcare than any country in the world. We spend 2 to 3 times what European nations spend. We spend nearly as much in our country for healthcare as all the other nations in the world combined, and yet we have the worst health outcomes. So I hope people will remember that. I spoke to it a little bit ago. Tell those friends of yours who are not yet on board with the Maha agenda to just look around. And so another thing that President Trump did that is of really importance that I want to point out is he signed an executive order restricting big pharma ads. And people say, well, that's restricting free speech and stuff. Folks, I was in advertising and marketing. That's how I rose up into corporate management out of that side. But I was dealing with some of the biggest agencies in the world. And then I had my own publishing business that I built the second largest tourism publishing business in California up over 20 years.
Mhm.
So I have almost 40 years dealing with advertising agencies and these big corporations. And I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that these big companies who are buying millions of dollars in ads from these big uh, advertising vehicles, they may not say it real directly in public, they'll never say it, but behind closed doors, it's well known that you will not promote an agenda that's contrary to their product success. And that's why on TV, you see ad after ad from the pharmaceutical industry showing us these wonderfully happy, beautiful people taking another drug to solve some other health problem that they have. And then you wonder why CBS, NBC, et cetera, they don't come out and support Bobby because they have billions of dollars at risk in advertising revenue if they come out and support him.
Mhm.
People need to understand the direct connection between this money and the vehicles of their information. And that's why it's such an uphill battle. So cutting out those ads, that's why they're trying to change their methods because they know if these ads come away, their ability to control the media message is going to be dramatically changed.
The executive order is not to ban the ads, it's just to force them to put the side effects up instead of just boasting how beneficial the drugs are. They need to list all the downsides, all the other conditions they may bring. And I think effectively that's going to curtail some of the advertising, but it's not an outright ban.
Correct. I'm glad you pointed that out. But let me point something else out to everybody. We've
Mhm.
all these ads that are spoken at, let's say, 170 to 200 words a minute. Now they go into the disclaimers and they're speeded up so that you can
Yeah.
barely follow it and everybody just tunes it out.
Yes.
And it's such a long laundry list of all the chronic diseases. They need to force the change that says whatever the speed of your words were throughout the ad, all of your disclaimers have to be at the exact same speed.
Yeah.
So then people will really go, oh my gosh, this is all the side effects? Whoa, I'm going to wait. Is there some holistic change in my diet or exercise routine or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
that will change that?
On the other hand, in the Maha community, a lot of people are not happy about that EO because it's not an outright ban. When Kennedy was campaigning for president for presidency, you know, he promised to ban the ads, not to have the ads put on the side effects. But now the EO is kind of a compromise for both sides, right? It's not banning them, but you have to put on side effects. The patients will actually see what they're getting into instead of just this one-sided story.
To your credit, you picked up on that. If you just go in, let me give another example. Bobby said, I'm going to kill all those ads. But the reality is, there's a lot of good people working in jobs. And if you just dramatically into that, you're going to put a lot of people out of work. You need to give these companies a chance to now modify their behavior and keep their jobs and these vehicles to stay around. So it sounds great. Yeah, kill it. Just like what Trump used to say, I'm lock her up for Hillary. I don't think for a minute he thought he was going to lock her up. What he was saying to the government and all the employees is, I'm going to start a new level of accountability. So you get forewarned.
Right.
Just what he said, build the wall. I don't think for a minute he thought he was going to build an entire wall the length of the border. But what he was signaling with that statement, it was a clear message that we're going to enforce border security. How it was going to be done would be left to work out. But it was a commitment to border security. It was a commitment to accountability. Bobby's commitment is to health. And now the reality of how do we do it? How do we do it with compassion for our fellow citizens? How do we give those good people who are locked in a system before, giving them a clear new leadership and direction that says, hey, folks, that's no longer acceptable.
Yeah.
Figure out a real quick change. And if you don't do it quickly enough, then that's where Congress will come in and force you to do it. So we're giving them a chance. Something else I want to point out that is something in California for all of our Maha followers and Maha Tiger Moms and others, something that's crucial as an example of how these big corporations, Now that Congress is starting to, and Bobby through and Trump through executive orders and what Bobby's doing, the rules have been changed dramatically. So what the corporations are doing, because they're not going away, they see their revenue streams being cut, and those people making all this money off of it are saying, well, what other ways can we do it? They're not stupid, and they're not just walking away, and they're not just quitting. So here's something for everybody in California and every other state. Watch for the same thing to happen. And I have a really dear friend, if he listens to this podcast, which I doubt that he would, because he is a well-known oncologist who has been immersed on the other side. We have been doing an extensive exchange of emails. I really like this guy. I have great respect for this man and his wife. And I met them, by the way, for people to know. So that, and Scarlett, I don't know if you know this, I think you probably do, but for people to know, when I got involved in this political effort, realizing what the stakes were and how I'd had this opportunity for the American dream to live and so many other people's sacrifices, made me realize that I needed to give back. After finding out the problem, the crux of the problem was the corruption of the leadership of both parties. And then I got into the reform movement. And after doing that for 3+ years, I realized that this was the single most important thing I could do with all of the learning that I had been given, all of the opportunities in life I had been given, to pay back so that my children, grandchildren, and others and future generations could have that opportunity or better than I even had. And so I sold my business, my publishing business that I'd built up over 20 years. I sold it to an investment banker. A year later, when he was supposed to start making payments on the principal, we learned that he'd been lying to me when we hired a big law firm. We investigated him, found out that he had been defrauding the advertisers. He never made one payment on the principal. He bankrupted my wife's and my retirement. And then I was faced with a choice after all of this learning of what was going on: go back into the corporate world to make money, to rebuild my retirement for my wife and I, or figure out another way to stay in the fight. My wonderful wife said, I'll dog sit, I'll do daycare. She had been taking care of my dad and mom for the last 4 and 6 years of their lives. And a buddy of mine in a Bible study said, Maxsenti, why don't you drive Uber? So I took my Social Security early. I took my pension from American Standard early. And I went and drove Uber. I gave over 4,000 rides for Uber. I then quit Uber to drive for a limousine service, thinking that might be a little easier. And after a year and a half, the owner came to me and said, Maxsenti, you've become our #1 driver, but you've got all this politics stuff. You're not available when I need you all the time. You're going out to these different conferences, and you've got these different seminars and webinars. And so he said, you have a choice: either quit all that so I can count on you more, or quit. I reached out my hand, I shook his hand, said thank you, and I walked out the door. And then I started my own private driving service, which I still do to this day. And I share that with people so that they understand the depths of my commitment. But what it taught me was it gave me the opportunity to learn of the realities. It took me from being a well-intentioned voyeur of these problems to really living them and understanding them, which helped give me the passion to continue to this work. And so I wanted to share that with your audience. But back to this issue that I got sidetracked on is in California with this doctor, and I met this doctor driving Uber. Actually, no, I met this driver, this friend, by driving for the limousine service, because he was, like I said, he's a fairly well-known oncologist. After I left the limousine company, I've been driving he and his wife for years as his personal driver for he and his wife. And we had a lot of political conversations. And he was one of the first donors to my campaign, by the way.
Wow.
Even though he and his wife have been big supporters of Obama and Biden. But he knew in the many conversations we'd had. And so we've been in this exchange. And this was something he shared with me. And I want to share it with the audience. It's directly from the California Medical Association. And I'm going to read a couple of sentences, a paragraph or so, because it's really important for people to see that these good doctors, nurses, why could they do what they did during COVID and about these vaccines? Well, folks, we've got to understand that most all of those people are well-intentioned, good people like ourselves. So I'm going to read you this. Protect access to life, saving vaccines, pass SB 144. So this is in California from the California Medical Association. This is what every doctor who's a member and nurse who's a member of the Medical Association, this was a letter they just were given recently in the last week or so. Recent federal actions have created uncertainty about whether national vaccination recommendations, the standards that determine insurance coverage, will continue to follow well-established science that shows vaccination is safe and effective at protecting people against disease. Without action, Californians could lose guaranteed access to the vaccines that keep our communities safe. That's why the California Medical Association has worked with Newsom's administration and the legislature to introduce SB 144. This bill locks in evidence-based vaccine standards, updates insurance coverage requirements, and ensures Californians continue to have access to life-saving vaccines regardless of shifting federal policies. I won't go on and read this whole letter, but there's a couple of important things I want to leave them with. This, what they're talking about, and this legislation locks it in. And what it locks in is it sets California's baseline for vaccine coverage as the immunization schedules recommended by the United States Preventative Services Task Force, the Advisory Committee to Immunization Practices, which is what Kennedy just replaced all of them because of the corruption of them.
Yes.
The Health Resources and Services Administration as of January 1, 2025. So all of those policies, vaccine schedules, etc., that were official at the end of last year before Bobby and Kennedy got in and started to change, that's what they're locking in to the state of California if this bill passes. So everybody, call out your California State Assembly person, call out your California state member to SB 144. We must stop this legislation from being enacted in our state of California. And I guarantee similar pieces like this are being instituted around the country in every state in the union as their way to get around what Bobby is able to do. So folks, this effort, we cannot sit back and think we're making all this progress. Sit back and get complacent. And all you Tiger moms who every day are dealing with your sons and daughters, I know you'll take another deep breath and go, this battle is a long way from over.
It's just too many battles. Every single day, you have to think about what do you have to oppose. The more progress on the federal level, the more resistance we will have in these deep blue states.
And that goes again, and I don't mean to self-promote my candidacy, but there's many other people like myself that are running around the country for office, for Congress, because if we do not hold or hopefully expand, because they're going to intensify their efforts to stop us, if we don't at least hold on to both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, with a majority that supports these policies that Bobby and Trump are trying to do, they will grind everything to a halt, and everything everyone's working on will come to a dramatic change. And that's unacceptable on any level for any of us. And so it's so crucial, everyone, to find good people who are there, who are willing to dedicate themselves. And just to give people a sense of what I mean by dedication, just for me to do this as a first-time public office, this is the first time I've ran for public office, I've had to not work. I've got 3 other drivers taking my clients, and I'm giving them 100% of what I would have been paid to drive these people to LAX, John Wayne Airport, to concerts. I'm actually driving one of my favorite friends in the long term that has helped support me by using me as a driver for them. That this guy used to work for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I'm driving them to concerts and to the airport, and they pay me well to do that for them. I've had to walk away from that business, take money every month out of my savings just to pay our bills. My wife's back dog sitting. And we're willing to do that. And we joke, my wife and I, when things get a little tough, and I say to her, no one has yet shot at me. And that's no reference to Charlie. I've not had to eat one dinner out of a ration can. I've not had to spend one
Yeah.
night in a rainy foxhole in a sleeping bag. And so we'll look at each other and say, if this is as tough as it gets, then you've got to dog sit, I've got to drive Uber, sometimes getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning to get people to the early flights at LAX.
Mm-hmm.
We do this because we can and we must. It's
Mm-hmm.
our way of giving back to the country that so many of our family and friends, people from your homeland that have sacrificed their lives to get us the opportunity for this freedoms. So I'm not a martyr. I'm not a saint. It's not about me. It's about us.
I don't want you to be a martyr, but I have sheer respect for you and your wife for doing this. Thank you. Our nation really, really need people like you guys.
Well, and we need people like you. It's all of us. It's about all of us. And we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah,
So I'm
thank
asking people to look for good candidates, people who are not career politicians, people who are really willing to walk away from
you.
jobs, walk away from their careers, to dedicate themselves. It's a minimum. I've already given up a year of my life to this, not including all the years of before that in the political
Of
reform that
course.
I've been working, but just to do this job, to get elected. And I'm going to campaign all next year to get elected. I'll have given up 2 years of income, 2 years of my job to get elected. And then I'm going to go to Congress. And now for
You're
me,
not gonna take money from big pharma. That's the thing. A lot of people go to DC to get rich. You're not one of them.
no. And then one of the reasons why we go to Congress, we have to do two things. I just signed, and I'm proud of it, a term limits commitment to support the constitutional amendment that guarantees that Congress can only do 3 terms, or in other words, 6 years,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 Senate terms for a total of 12 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally behind that. However, when I get to Congress, not only will I support that constitutional amendment and try to do that, I will support it all the way. But at the same token, I'm going to try to work with a lot of other good people in there to institute through Congress a set of term limits that Congress can pass on themselves, because there's some things that they can do. And what I would like to see Congress do is pass term limits, because that can be done quicker, easier. And then when one of the things I'm going to be fighting for is citizens assembly, so we can make citizens an integral part of real decision making,
Mm-hmm.
not out in the hinterlands talking in echo chambers
Yeah.
that are irrelevant. And then as we get better civic education, we get less censorship, we get more people of integrity into office, then Congress, and with the help of citizens assemblies, can modify term limits as changes take place. Because I was against term limits until just recently, because I felt, and the way the founders believed in it, term limits are best done at the voting box. That is why the members of House of Congress, of the House of Representatives, have only 2-year terms, so that they're held accountable every 2 years to their constituents. Well, we know that's been blown off years ago because of many reasons. But so if we institute term limits, that's why I was against it. But now I realize is that they're not going to happen unless we force it from the outside, or until we get people like myself and enough others in there. And like I said, there's a number of others already there who are just needing reinforcements. So folks, it won't take long. If we can elect 5 or 10 of us newcomers to Congress, there's a lot of good people in organizations like Low Labels, people like Tom Massey, there's others, without calling them out, who are waiting for the reinforcements so they can stand up and do the right thing on behalf of the American people, at the same time support the new leadership within the Republican Party. And there's a lot of great people in the Democratic Party who are just chomping at the bit to reform their party. So we can't discount people because they're already in a party, but we need to find reinforcements who are committed to these kind of changes.
Thank you for the update, and especially, yeah, I didn't know about that bill you were talking about. There's just so many bills we have to oppose, and you miss things.
Well, you've got 2 children that
I have
need your love
three.
and
I have
attention,
three.
that need your love and attention, and that's why we need our representatives to do their job.
Yeah, it is their job, but instead of doing our bidding, they're doing the bidding of big pharma, the big corporations. It's all inverse. So, yeah.
I know you'd mentioned earlier that you'd like me to talk a little bit about my campaign, and I've talked more than I thought I would about it. But I do want to let people know that a little bit briefly, very briefly, about my background and why I feel I'm uniquely qualified to do this job. It's not just because of my passion for what I've talked about earlier. It's not just because I've been a volunteer on these things and done that. I was the youngest president of a division of American Standard Corporation at 33. I rose up from a rookie salesperson in 8 years to lead a division. I was chosen a few years later to be the COO of a joint venture for Nissan, of a subsidiary of Nissan Corporation and another Japanese company. I oversaw building a manufacturing plant here in Irvine, launched this company for them, got it off the ground and going well. Then I got blessed late in life with my own child after raising my stepdaughter, who's a wonderful lady, raising her for 14 years lovingly. We got gifted with a son of our own. I then fulfilled a commitment to walk away from the corporate world to being a parent first. So I did. I walked away from a job that I was making in 1992. When I walked away from this job, I was making in 1992, I was making almost double in base salary that I will make as a US member of the House. I walked away from that kind of major income to fulfill a commitment to being a father. I started my publishing business so that I could build my hours around being a father. I took my son to school almost every single day. I picked him up almost every single day from school. And then I coached him on 15 sports teams, president of the Little League, club team. I had baseball. And while I was doing all that, I was on the board of directors for Children's Hospital of Orange County for 14 years. But I did the publishing because I could go to work, drop him off at school, go to work for 4 or 5 hours, go take care of him when he went to sleep at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I could stay up until midnight working again, and and then I built the company and I built a staff that was there on regular hours that really did a great job to allow me to do my job as a parent first. And so I did those things. And when I was at Children's Hospital, just to let people know a little bit of some of the things that I did there, I helped elevate an event that had been there for, I don't know, 25, 30 years called Sportsman of the Year. I was made vice chair of that for 2 years as a commitment before coming chair. And I elevated that from the largest fundraiser that it had been for the hospital. I made changes in 2 years, each year making it a bigger fundraiser, netting for the hospital more money than it had ever done before. Then when I was given the opportunity and asked to take on the chairmanship, I changed the whole event, created an event called Heroes of the Heart that more than doubled the profits to the hospital in its first year and second year. That created the whole concept of local heroes, that after 6 years, that concept of local heroes went ubiquitous nationally. So I voted to kill it and helped a friend of mine start a new event, which replaced it and ran for 25 years as the biggest fundraiser in the history of the hospital. So I've always had the ability to see a problem, come up with a vision of where it could go, and then bring together people to execute and make it happen and bring it to life. That's the kind of skills I was given by God, and I want to bring to Congress to help. We know where we need to go, help create visionary solutions, and then bring people together, Democrats, Republicans, independents, experts, moms, the people necessary to create and craft really great solutions, effective solutions for the problems we face, and make them accountable. And just like I did in business, you have to justify your budget every year when it comes up for renewal. And if you don't justify it, you change it or it goes away. You don't just give more money to it and perpetuate things that aren't working. So that's the kind of things I wanted to share with the audience a little bit, and ask them to go to my website, Maxsenti, MAXS. I know you'll have it in the show notes.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Or forcongress.com. And I'm asking people to make donations. We're a grassroots campaign funded by small dollar donations. The big money hasn't showed up yet because they're still on the sidelines. And that's where I need small dollar donations. $5, $25, $500, whatever you're capable of giving. Know that any investment you make in me is an investment. You may not be able to vote for me, but understand that everything I do in Congress will be on your behalf. So I would ask for your support. I need it so that we can go to Congress on your behalf. So,
yeah. Michael, I have zero doubt in my heart, when it comes to your ability to do things, to you have our best interest at heart, and you're going to go to DC and make a killing. I have zero doubt.
Kick some butt. I'm not going to make a killing. Kick some butt. Get things done.
Kick some butt. Yeah, I have zero doubt that you're going to do that. Because I've known you since the campaign. I know your capabilities. I know your passion. I know how you think. So you know, I would do whatever I could in my meager power to help you with that. The question is, do you think you can win?
I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, there is a clear path to victory that I have. District 47, and for people who don't know it, it's all of Irvine, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, and half of Seal Beach. I have lived and worked, by the way, in this district for 50 years. I moved into Laguna Beach in 1975. And if this unfortunate redistricting happens, and unfortunately in our state, there's a high probability.
Yeah.
I was a betting person, and somebody said, somebody gives me $100 and says, you can't put it in your pocket, you got to win it. Who would you bet on? Unfortunately, as tragic as it would be, in my opinion, it's going to pass because the Democratic machine of this state and nationally is doing everything in their power to take away the opportunity for people like myself and others to get elected to hold that majority in the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
But why I say there's a real clear path for victory here. Currently, as the district stands, we just got, and it's after 8 years of Democrat majority, it just swung over to a Republican majority by over 4,000 registrations.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Wow.
out of 476,000 or 465,000 registrations. So it's a small percentage, very small, but it's slightly Republican. The big number is the independents. There's like 164,000 plus Republican registrations. There's 153,000 or 160,000 basically Democrat. I'm a little bit off on the numbers. I can go to exact, let me be exact here. Currently in the district, there's 163,500 plus votes, registrations for Republicans, 159,224 Democrats, just over 4,000 more Republicans. There's 112,583 no party preference voters, the independent voters, and another 19,900 American Independent Party voters. That totals basically about 133,000 independent voters. That is the key, is these people who are independent thinkers who are not aligned with either party in the end. But if this redistricting goes through, in my district, what it will do, and it's similarly in most districts in the state, but what it does dramatically to 47, the core of the district is Laguna Beach and Irvine. They stay in it. It only holds the southern third of Newport Beach, which is Newport Coast and part of Corona Del Mar. And again, that's where I lived in that district in that 50 years. And it jettisons the northern part of Newport, all of Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, and Seal Beach. And it then picks up on the southern side Laguna Niguel, Dana Point, Laguna Woods, and Lake Forest and El Toro. That swings the district from a 4,000 plus Democrat or Republican majority to an over 10,000 Democrat majority. The new numbers switched to 159,000 for Democrats and only 148,000 for Republicans. The NPPs fortunately only dropped like 700 votes, and the AIP only drops by 800 votes. So again, the independents will be the key. It swings it by 14,000 votes, but that's out of 460 some thousand votes. I can win this district because even though we lose those 14,000 votes, I think the Democrat vote in the South County, in those communities I just listed, are far more what we consider soft Democrats. They were where the majority of our MAHA volunteers came from. These are really dedicated family folks who are really behind Kennedy and behind the MAHA agenda. So I'm confident that with the help of people like yourself that I'm fortunate to have here in Orange County and Southern California, that we will be able to overcome that 14,000 deficit. And I'm confident I can win the primary. The Republican Party has not put up anyone against me. They're said, Maxsenti, we understand the uniqueness of your candidacy, even though you check all the wrong boxes. I'm an old white guy, et cetera. But they also recognize that I have a grassroots volunteer foundation of wonderful people that are committed. That's why who are committed to supporting me. that we can overcome that 14,000 swing and win this, just win the primary, because no Republican is going against me, win in the primary, which means in California, the top two vote getters. When I say win, that only means coming in second. I don't expect to beat Dave Min in the primary. I do expect to beat his ass in a head-on-head when we get to November in 2026, because all of those people who are concerned about their health, concerned about the real cost of a living, the real wanting and desire for accountability, which are the three major platforms of myself, is driving down immediately the cost of living. And there's some really significant ways to do that with Congress can help on. Second is to drive the MAHA agenda. And third, and equally as important, is to drive accountability, to make those changes in Congress, to drive accountability so that those long-term results can hold. So I have a real clear path to victory. And the Republican leadership here in Orange County and in California, which is part of the new GNP, the Grand New Party leadership, not the GOP, the Grand Old Party, but the new leadership has been really supportive in the way they can at this time and given me a runway to prove the legitimacy of our campaign and the support that has come forth. I've had 3 meet and greets, all put on by former people that I stood on the freeway barriers with, that I did caravanning with, tabling with. These incredible MAHA team are all behind me, and I wouldn't be here without them, and I wouldn't be doing it without them. And so, yes, we can win, and we will.
That sounds great. Well, which also brings about another question. I have no doubts that you will win hearts and votes, but how about election integrity? I don't doubt they're going, they're not going to be honest with the ballot box.
And again, I'm grateful for that question, because that is a hugely important issue. It's one I've been involved in since 2012. We're blessed in Orange County. Orange County was picked out by some of the national leaders behind the voter integrity movement because of our unique situation here, because it's considered one of the big money districts in the nation for both parties. But we have an amazing group of voter integrity. There's a couple of groups working together to clean up the voter rolls. And for people who go, oh, voter integrity, oh, that's a scam, that's a lie, they don't understand how it's done. And without going into great detail, the biggest way it's done is by having voter rolls that are not closed up. And I'll give you an example. UCI, which has been 94 to 97% of the 6 precincts surrounding UCI have voted Democrat in the last, that I know of, 3 elections. I've worked on the campaigns of a congressman who's lost that, and then I had the inside facts of the one who lost it the last 2 times. 94 to 97% of those votes have gone Democratic. Why is that? Oh, gee. Well, they pay people in charge of dorms, people in charge of student housing to go register voters for the Democratic Party. Then they send all the addresses to that dorm leader, to that one address. Now that dorm person gets to go up and deliver those to the individual rooms or put them in their mailboxes if they're still there. And oh, that student left school, moved on, graduated, went back to a foreign country, moved out of state. Oh, that's okay. They don't take them off the voter rolls. They now have thousands, and we have documentation on this, thousands of former students, UCI, that are no longer in California, no longer able to vote, but every election cycle they get to vote. Their votes are counted. And so that's one example of how it's done. We have a great group of people right now have been working on this issue hard for over a year that are forcing our register of voters, that's the ROV is the acronym, to clean up their voter rolls. So I'm confident that we will have some of the cleanest voter rolls in all of California and the country come to vote. But one other thing that's important is that with this redistricting, District 47 will be out of 6 districts now, 8 under the proposal, will be the only self-contained Orange County district, which means the register of voters in Orange County is the one register of voters that we can put a lot of pressure on and focus it on. But these other districts are often put into 3 different counties. They have part of their precincts are in Riverside, San Bernardino, and Orange County. They're in LA, San Bernardino, or Riverside and Orange County. They're in San Diego, Riverside, and Orange County, so that they have the ability to funnel in votes from those other ROVs that aren't under the crucial pressure to clean up their rolls the way Orange County is. But that's another reason why I have a path to victory, is because we'll have such clean voter rolls. And this issue of voter integrity, folks, is huge. And there's really simple ways that we could do it. One thing I want to tell people, every single American citizen needs an easy way to vote, but vote only one time. And we need to secure those votes. And people say, oh, they can't get a voter ID. They can't get to it because you need an ID. That's bogus. That's nothing but bullshit. Everybody has to have an ID to get on an airplane, to buy a ticket, to almost anything, cash a check, you name it. But for those people, and there are some who don't have a proper ID, every single post office could give one out. There's easy ways for those few people who have real difficulty, or if they're in nursing homes, they're in inability to leave to go get it. It can be brought to them. We can secure the vote, and then they could be given a unique QR code. There's lots of ways to do it. Andrew Yang had a great idea with a QR code. Give everybody a unique QR code. And then you can make sure that there's only one vote. And when that person passes and the county coroner's office hands off to the ROV that this individual has passed away, or this individual no longer is buying utilities in California because they're on record buying them in Arizona or some other state, that's all data that can be used to say, oh, that person needs to be taken off the voter rolls. So there's lots of ways to use technology today to be able to clean up our voter rolls, to bring back trust and accountability into all of our votes. But know why it's not been done? Because those career politicians don't want it done, because it's benefited both parties. The illegal immigration has supported both parties, and that's why they don't want to change it.
I have some questions from some friends. Okay, gosh, this first question is pretty sad, but talk about your thoughts on Charlie Kirk and his assassination.
Obviously, it's tragic, particularly for his two young daughters and his wife and family and friends.
Yeah.
Charlie died doing what he was called to do. Charlie died quickly, doing what he was called to do, and his death will amplify his effort of what he was working on. And so he was blessed to be able to live in the gift that he was, to be taken the way he was, which will amplify his life's work. His immediate family and friends are the ones that suffer the loss, but he died doing what he was committed to doing. And I'm sure, given the choice of that for him, a man of character would say, I will die for my children. And you as a mom, once you have a child, you understand why somebody would jump in front of a train for their kid, why they'd step in front of a bullet for their kid. And Charlie Cook took a bullet for his children.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. In a way, he is blessed, the way he departed this world. But the rest of us are just devastated. He's 31. He's got, he's still a kid, just taken out like in his prime, just taken out like that. Till this day, I cannot believe, that is the reality. I kept thinking, this is a bad dream. He's inspired so many college kids. In an ideal world, he would live to his old days and having just overturned this whole indoctrination system, right? I saw that path for him, but now he's gone, and the colleges are still woke, and I don't know. I just feel really, really, really sad, and I still have yet to come to terms to the reality.
Maybe this won't help anybody come to terms with it, but it's something that was part of my motivation, as I alluded to earlier. You know what the average age of those people, those men who died and landed on Normandy beaches were? The average age was 19.
Oh,
19. When I was a sophomore at San Diego State, in that first lottery, one of my three roommates was number one in the lottery. He pulled out of school 2 weeks later, moved to Canada, and I never saw him again. I was given a number 166. My draft board went to 164, and there, but for the grace of God, I could have gone. And as part of my reflection to make me that started me on this journey was the reality that by the time I graduated from South Torrance High School 2 years earlier, two of my classmates had already been killed in Vietnam. By the time I left San Diego State after 4 years, a number of the guys that entered there, I went down there to play football originally. A number of the guys I entered school with were killed, and a number of those who came home were severely wounded and never were the same. And their average, these guys were all 17, 18, 19. And I was thinking as I sat there on my deck overlooking Laguna Beach, living this American dream, having done the things that I mentioned earlier, in the middle of doing them, uh, and the sacrifices that my father and those people that made, how he walked away from college and signed up for World War II and was on a troop transport ship one day out of San Francisco Harbor, due to land in Pearl Harbor the next day on December 7th, 1941. He then ended up in a two-man glider flying into France, was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was 90 miles west of Berlin on VE Day, listening to the sacrifices of the survivors of his unit. When I would go to his reunions as a little boy sitting on the floor, I was reflecting on their sacrifices as Charlie just made. And that's those people, they gave their lives for this country based on a commitment to future generations and a recognition. I don't mean to be so emotional, but it is raw because of Charlie and so
Yeah.
much. But they gave their lives on a belief in a country, just as Charlie did. And it's time for people to do the same, to step up, who've been given this opportunity to step up now.
Yeah. Well, may he rest in peace, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and everybody at Turning Point USA, and just all Americans who've been, broken and traumatized by this assassination. And I do believe his legacy will live on to influence generations of Americans.
I'm very confident he's resting in peace.
How would you go about fighting illicit drugs and crimes and homelessness?
It's a big question. Obviously, we need to secure the borders. And I believe in something that Kennedy said very much. We need to have high gates, high walls, and wide gates.
Mm-hmm.
Our broken immigration system that has, at the total responsibility of Congress, their lack of taking responsibility and doing this job since 1986, when a very good, comprehensive immigration law was passed and passed by Tip O'Neill and the Democratic Congress, signed into law by President Reagan, a Republican president, that never got implemented. And that is exactly why we've had this disastrous immigration law. And that immigration law has been one of the major contributors to the drug trafficking, to the human trafficking, which something is not talked nearly about, this human trafficking. When I tell my wife her biggest issue is this children, the human trafficking and with children. And I said, when you see me down, sweetie, just remind me of that. And those are some of the things that get me up to get motivated again to get out here. So how would I approach it? First and foremost, we've got to secure that border. We've got to support those people in immigration services to dig in to every single one of those drug dealers in this country. And we got a lot of politicians being paid off by the drug cartels. We have got to crack down on those people and get them kicked out of office, get them held accountable for what they're allowing. But beyond that, the specific thing of homelessness, which is just a heart-wrenching problem, we have to, it's a multifaceted issue. I've listened to a number of podcasts on it. I've sat in on seminars on it, on webinars on it with leaders in the homeless community. It's a really big problem that we have to attack on as many fronts as possible with as much resources as possible. We have to look at the root causes that drive people into homelessness. The biggest cause of homelessness is the cost of medical bills. Bankruptcy is the biggest cause of personal bankruptcy in this country is medical bills. And there's some very specific things that I will mention in a second on that we can do. But we have to attack the issues of drug abuse, addiction, financial that drive people into homelessness, how to help them get off the streets immediately. I mean, I've known and worked for a year, 18 months to get an old buddy of mine who went homeless off the streets of Palm Springs and Hemet, finding out how dastardly our systems is. It took me 18 months to get him off the street, driving out to the Inland Empire week after week to try to get him out of hospitals, help him get his papers. It was pathetic. these systems are written from people from the top down, from their ivory towers. Well, he just has to show up at this appointment. Do you realize he's homeless? He doesn't have money. He gets beaten up regularly because he's such a small guy, and they take anything he has. He can't get there without me driving an hour and a half or 2 hours to get to him. Can't you make it open with a flexible time for him to get there? Or no. He has to make this 9 a.m. appointment or a specific appointment. If he's 15 minutes late, he has to come back. These kind of shit things. So we need to address it on multiple fronts with immense sense of urgency, with immense resources, and a diversity of perspective from the homeless people to the people working in these great charities, and to create a holistic citizens assembly approach to solving it. Too many of almost all of our legislation is passed by people who come out of elite backgrounds. They don't engage the people that the policy is going to directly affect into the decision making. They come from it from this top down castle perspective and write this legislation. And oh, it didn't work. Give it more money. Oh, it didn't work. Why not? Oh, keep giving it money to GNOs. And that's how they approach it instead of really effectively coming up with good solutions. And let me talk for a moment about this most important issue that we just mentioned about what drives homelessness, which is the cost that drives homelessness, the cost of healthcare, and it's bankrupting or putting family after family or individual after individual into income insecurity and at the expense of all of our families. The problem is Washington policies, and I just wrote this up. Washington policies make healthcare more expensive than it should be. Tax breaks for employer insurance push families into bloated, costly plans. And then when you leave that company, you're now given the option of COBRA. Well, if you haven't had COBRA experience, COBRA is going to cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month to have this bridge insurance policy. And now you just lost your job. You're trying to find another job, and now you got to pay for COBRA on your diminishing savings. All healthcare, in my opinion, should be totally portable. As we transition away from company benefits, companies used to make their benefits part of the allure to go to one company over another. Now it's part of the chain, part of the handcuffs that keep people in jobs because they can't afford to go get another one. So all healthcare needs to be affordable and it needs to be portable. Patients need to see real prices of what these pills cost, what their medical procedures cost, and with real honest information so they can make an honestly informed consent decision about what drugs they're going to take, what medical procedures they're going to allow to be performed on them, etc. Government rules block competition right now, keeping out new hospitals, keeping out new doctors, keeping out innovation so that they can protect these associations like the Medical Association and others who are all about themselves and money and protecting their own little fiefdoms. Medicare and Medi-Cal, underpaid providers, forcing hospitals to overcharge the rest of us. So my commitment, and you'll see that when you go to my webpage, I don't say we can do this, because that's a bullshit excuse to say when it gets tough or there's another opposition, it didn't happen. But I'll try it. I'll keep trying. You couldn't do that in business. I could never get away with that in my own business for 20 years. I couldn't get away from it as president or COO of those corporations. You have to prove results. And so I make commitments, whether it be to the children of Laguna Beach, changing the culture there, or the Children's Hospital, or these companies, or my own company. I say I'm going to do something. That means I'm going to do it, damn it. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, it got tough. I'm sorry. I'll try again tomorrow. No, what's the deadline? Who's it affecting? How fast do we need to get it done? And then you put 100% of your effort into it, and you get the resources necessary behind it to solve it. You don't sit there and say, I can do it. I make a commitment that I will do these things. I will bring honesty to costs. No more hidden subsidies or backroom deals. I will unleash competition. I'm going to kick some butt and open the door for new hospitals, clinics, and innovations, and more nurses, more nurse practitioners. My daughter's in school now to become a nurse practitioner. She went from cancer research to being a BSN. Now she's getting her nurse practitioners, and she tells me of the stupid rules and hours. That needs to be changed. We need to stop the overcharging game. Subsidies should be transparent, not hidden in bills. So those are some of the things that I will commit to doing to help drive down the biggest cost of almost everybody. My wife and I, at our age, even with Medicare, to get really the top end of it, we pay over $9,000 a year just for my wife and I. Hello? Now, fortunately, because of my surgeries, I've come out okay on it. But for young people like yourself, these kind of costs are outrageous.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be that way, except for the fact that they're benefiting a small group of our society, our political elites, our corporate elites. And that has to and will change.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. How's your time looking like?
Let's take one more question. You picked a favorite question.
Okay, so last question. We would like to get gender ideology out of public school system.
You know, and I hate to keep repeating myself. Thank you for that question. It's such a hugely sensitive and important issue. First off, it should not be taught in our schools. I'm 100% behind that.
Thank you.
What is one of the major drivers, though? There's a couple of things. I've got a number of friends who are gay, and I've been around it since I was a child, many, many, many years ago, before it became commonplace. And I came to recognize that there are literally in nature deviations of what is considered, quote, normal. What's normal? And you look around in nature, and some of the most beautiful creations of nature are the deviations, the flowers that uniquely are different. They're not right in these little regiments. You look around at some of the most beautiful people in the world. They're not just pure German, whatever nationalities they are. They're the blends. Nature, in its differences, creates the most beautiful things that we all love. I mean, so we have to accept that in nature, there are variations from the majority.
We're not against that. It's about
But
the indiscriminate indoctrination that being gay is somehow glorious. Being transgender is somehow more acceptable than being just accepting who you are. That's what we are against.
yeah, and I totally agree with you. I didn't mean to get off track, but I wanted to make it clear about my feeling about people who are born with a different makeup of their
I get
chromosomes
that. Yes.
than the majority.
Yes.
But teaching of it, that comes back to parents, and it comes back to the breakdown of the families. It comes back to the breakdown of our cultural institutions and our entertainment industry that play off of that. First and foremost, good parents, almost every single person at some point in their maturation process questions their sexuality. I did as a child. I'm open about. I remember as a little boy wondering, was I gay? But I had good role models of a mother and a father and what it meant to. So it became real easy for me to, I'm a guy, I got all the tools and that. But at the same token, in our today's culture, with the breakdown of the family, with over 70%, and this is an old number, I'm sure it's well over that now, in urban cities where you have one parent in a household who's trying to work 2 and 3 jobs to survive, to raise one or more children, they don't have the time to be that parent. So their children are being raised by the entertainment industry. And the entertainment industry plays up these quirks and makes it glamorous to do this stuff. But where the core solution starts with helping parents learn their responsibility to teach gender identity, and then recognize if they have a child who's truly given different chromosomes, to recognize and be empathetic to that and go, wow, that's cool. Okay, if that's the way you were born, fine. But if you're just having gender, whatever the terms they call it,
ideology, that's what's in the public school system.
Parents, the responsibility. How do you teach your child to be a good man or a good woman? How do you teach through the entertainment industry? Don't tell me you're a reflection of society. That's a bullshit lie, entertainment industry. You turn around, put the money in your pocket, and you sell product placement at outrageous figures because you know your impact on the audience. That's why I advertise. I was in advertising marketing for 40 years. That's why advertising rates are so high, because of the impact on the audience of your message. So don't lie to us that you're a reflection of society. You change society. You change culture. And you're destroying our families. You're destroying it. Our population is decreasing. Our children's birth rate is decreasing. We have to turn that around, folks. And we need to give people a reason to have a bright future, a hopeful future, so they'll want to have more children. They want to raise healthy children. They need to raise them in the sexual identity they were born with. And that might mean including they were born gay. That's fine. If you're born gay, great. If you're born straight, great. But there's not gender identity crisis other than part of maturation, learning about your body, learning about what it is to be a man and a woman.
Well, unfortunately, in our public schools, they're just indoctrinating the school children. The thing I'm like really bothers me is the glorification of the so-called diversity. But like it shouldn't be something that the school kids are focused on. They should be focusing on studying, not thinking about their sexuality. That's a totally different aspect of life. But somehow they just put this indoctrination system in our public school. So what do you have any plans to address that? Just give back a pure learning experience for our children in the schools. That's all I ask.
Yeah, one of the things in our education system, and I know it's not a direct answer to the question about what I would do specifically about it, other than to say this: our education system in America is terrible.
It is.
And if almost every single parent, if you ask them that have any knowledge of other countries and how they educate, and you gave them a choice and said, would you want your child in grammar school or preschool, wherever, in the lower years, would you like your child to go to school in Europe or some other country versus the American school system in America, public school system? And most always say, absolutely. I'd much rather have my child educated in France or Germany, some of their schools, and in England, where if they want to go off and learn the trades, they've got great trade training, which is something that's a whole nother subject to get into for the next time we talk. But then we flip that and say, now for the university level, college and university levels, if you were given the choice, where would you want your child to go to university at? Europe or America? It's the flip-flop. Almost every single person would say America. Why? Because in America, you have a choice to where you go to college.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice that you make which institution you want to go to that focuses on your needs, your interests. That's why we need to introduce choice at the lowest levels to education so that people have that flexibility, and it will drive up competition within the school district, get them to focus on the core teaching. And we have some great examples of teaching real creativity, curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
We should have arts back in the school. All those things that teach learning about curiosity about life, not rote memorization to become a better worker, to become a better factory worker. And that's how our education system, our public education system got launched, was to create better workers for factories in the Industrial Revolution. And that began to change the entire education process. We need to go back to saying, and with AI, all the changes again for the next conversation, we need to develop a good quality education system with choice, transparency, parents, ability to understand the curriculum, etc. And I'll leave it at that in our limited time that we need to.
Yes, thank you. Sounds like the more we talk, the more things we need to be talking about. So I look forward to inviting you back. Thank you so much for your time, and let me know whatever I can help with.
I appreciate it. And just help it here. Go take care of those 3 wonderful children of yours. Keep doing this podcast. I know you're doing everything you can, and you're doing a wonderful job with it. So thank you, Scarlett.
Thank you. Thank you.